Kim. Thank you guys. Yeah, I'm Jody Bliss, and I just want to say thank you. I'm super grateful and humbled to have been chosen for this. I think it's just was something that really came together for me as far as where I am in my life, and I've had great support along the way. So thank you to Ellen and Liz and the Gardens for all of that. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you'll be seeing today. So what I think is that a good life is one hero's journey after another. Over and over again, you're called to the realm of adventure. You're called to new horizons. Each time there's the same problem. Do I dare? And then if you do dare, the dangers are there, and the help also, and the fulfillment or the fiasco. There's always the possibility of fiasco, but there's also the possibility of bliss. Those aren't my words. Those are Joseph Campbell's words from his book, Pathways to Bliss, Mythology and Personal Transformation. Campbell reminds us to follow our bliss, and I prefer to forge mine. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a backstory of where I've been for the past 20 years. 20 years ago, I started working in metal at Western State College. I was doing jewelry, I got into welding, and then 13 years ago, I discovered blacksmithing. And after really playing around with a lot of different mediums, I found that love. I found that spark that was like, okay, this is it. So after a year of doing that, I started my business. So 12 years ago, almost to the day, I started my business. And when I started, it was just me. And I would make art during the week. I would pack it up in my van. I would go to art shows on the weekend. I was doing like 24 of these art shows a year. And it was wonderful and difficult and extremely taxing and rewarding and all of the things that any great journey is. And as I got into the end of my 20s, I started to realize that, you know, this was going to kill me. I don't know if there's any other artists here that have done the art show circuit, but it is, man, it takes a lot. So kind of at this point where I'd started to think about this, I needed change in my life, serendipity stepped in, as it tends to do. And one of the shows that I was doing was a studio tour. And so I had about 350 people come through my studio that weekend. And 3 of them in particular said about the same thing. And what they said was, okay, yeah, I get it, like you make art, but I see all your machinery and I also feel like you could make me a gate. And so, ignoring the screaming voice of the artistically idealistic 25-year-old Jody, I said, yes, absolutely, I can make you a gate. So I found this little path where I could step away from the show circuit for a minute and I could do architectural ironwork and not have to travel as much. I booked out about 6 months worth of work at that show. So I started into making these gates, and pretty quickly I realized, you know, I can't do this by myself. I can't physically move these things around the studio. So that gave me a revelation that, you know what, I need some helping hands. And so I hired my first employee, Miss Ellie Byard over here. And this was 7 years ago. So from that first introduction into the architectural ironwork, you know, I thought I'd go back to doing shows. But as it turns out, you have to be careful what you make because it's what you're going to end up making. So the demand grew for this work. As the demand grew, I hired more employees. As I got more employees, I had to find more work. So the past 7 years have been, I would title them anything custom metalwork. And so we've been doing railings and gates and fences and stairways and chandeliers and just anything that anyone would come to me with. They'd say, hey, can you do this? And I'd say, yeah, I can do that. Well, I've never done that before, but like, yeah, I can do that. And so it was this really intense period of saying yes, stepping into challenges, learning, and a lot of growth. And then here at the beginning of 2023, I had just another little shift in mentality of, you know, the other thing that happens when you grow into having a lot of employees is that you slowly grow out of the physical shop work, which is where my passion was and what I really loved. And so I had a seed planted in my head that, you know, it's time for me to slow down and dial back and get back into the studio and back into the things that I really love, that fulfill my soul. So that seed's planted, and then, of course, as it does, serendipity steps in again, and this art call came out. And it was exactly what I needed to say, all right, it's time to take that leap and to move into the next phase. So I'm happy to tell you what I think the next phase is, but it's not fully formed. So the pieces, starting here with this first piece, this seed pod full of limitless possibility. And I encourage you, when you visit this piece, to take a deeper look into it. This is what I think, when we start on any journey, it is limitless possibility. It could go one way or another. It could be fiasco, but it could also be bliss. And so as we're living this life, you know, if there's a seed pod that feels worthy of that risk and that jump, I think that's, for me, what's worth living for. So we start with limitless possibility, and I find that my process also follows this idea. The next piece is called the calling, and that's what I think of as, you know, it's this knocking at your door, it's this knocking at your brain that's going, you know, you may turn around, oh, sounds like a great idea, but I could never do that. And then you turn away from it, but it keeps coming back, and it's like, okay, all right, maybe there's something to this, maybe I need to listen to it. And then in the third piece, that journey has been accepted, and the seed has sprouted. It's broken free from the fertile soil. And then in the fourth piece, after growing and leafing out and gaining strength, is the leap. And that's a really exciting point. You feel full of life and possibility, and there's no doubt. But then, of course, after the leap, there has to be the fall. And you have to learn some lessons, and you have to be willing to get up and do it again and fall again and get up. And this is part of, you know, one of the reasons I love Joseph Campbell is because he pulls together myths from all cultures all over the world, and they all have this really common theme, which speaks to the idea that this is inherent in our psyche and in the human condition. And the idea of having to face these challenges and fall and get up and move forward is one that I think is really important to a life well lived. So after the fall, or the multiple falls, then it's time to cross the bridge. And once you cross the bridge and you remember to just keep showing up, and the value of showing up when you're defeated, and just putting one foot in front of the other, and just trusting that that next stepping stone is going to be there. And it usually appears a lot of times right before footfall. You know, you've got that forward motion, and you keep showing up every day, every day, every day, and your path will unfold, trusting that. So after we've gained our forward motion, then I think it's really important to center and find our gratitude. Slow down and just remember what's brought us to where we are. So you'll find that piece budding with gratitude, following forward motion. And then after budding, of course, we have blossoming. And I think, for me, from my experience, that blossoming, like with many flowers, is really brief, but it's this moment of just ultimate beauty because it is brief, and because it has all of the energy of the journey that came before it in there. And then there's one more. The final step in the process after you've blossomed is spreading the seeds, returning with your boon and sharing your boon with the world, spreading the new seeds of limitless possibility. So as with so many things, that it comes full circle. And I think for myself and for the, you know, the reason that I went this direction with this series is because that's where I feel like I am, and what I felt like I needed in my life right now was I have come full circle. I want to be back in the studio where I was with Ellie 7 years ago, listening to music and dancing and just feeling that passion again. So that's kind of the short end of the story. I do want to do a real quick thank you to all of the different renditions of the Bliss Studio team, to my family and friends, and especially to the 4 sets of hands and hearts that helped me create this, which are my assistants in the studio, Alex DiFiore, Ian Larson, and Josh Hardman, and Deborah Shane. We're all amazing support. They came in, they worked their booties off with me in the studio in July, and the Forge is not a cool place to be in July. So thank you to everybody who helped me on this. That I want to be on. So all of this, since the choosing, was all designed, created, and installed all in that short period of time. But it was, and honestly, it's, you know, I spoke about that really defining moment of transition that I had before when I switched into the architectural ironwork, and that's what this show is for me. This was, I'm gonna step into this transition, and it has been hard. I've been working every day for like 2 months and weekends, and it's been, you know, there have been challenges. I've had my machines, I had my 2 major machines go out during this time, and my basement flooded, and it was, the universe was like, all right, Jody, like, you want this? Like, here you go. But, you know, just keep showing up, and so this is a defining moment, I think, for me right now, to be able to step into it. So thank you all for sharing this with me. Quite a bit. I have an opening tomorrow night in Longmont at Flanders Park. We just installed this butterfly pavilion art piece that is a tribute to the relationship between Longmont and Guzman, Mexico, which is an interesting one. So that is there. I have pieces in Loveland, a lot around Colorado Springs, in the Flying Horse community. I think I have in Colorado probably between 15 and 20 permanent pieces of public art. And then between Colorado and Kansas, I have probably about 30 pieces of the art on loan type of stuff. So keep your eye out. You'll see it. You asked that because there was one thing that I didn't share with you, and that is, you know, one of the things that I have a passion for, and have this weird growing obsession. I think it happens when you're about 35. I'm like obsessed with birds. So all of a sudden, I think birds are like the coolest thing ever, and just I dove headfirst into studying birds, and I forage a lot of birds. So we think back to that, the Joseph Campbell quote, and the idea that when you step into the journey, the guides, the help appear, the fairy godmothers, for lack of a better term. So you will find birds in all of the pieces except one, where you'll find butterflies instead. But in my mind, that's the significance of the birds. So if you observe the interaction between the bird and the piece, it will give you another clue as to that story. I also really love hiding things in little details. So there are, in all of the pieces, you can come back 20 times and you'll find new things. So yeah, and it's, you know, I won't spell it out too much, because I think it's more impactful, because I think the role of the artist is really, you know, I've gone through this journey and I've put my energy into it, and it has given me a lot, but now I've released it to the wind, right? And my hope is that it would resonate with you in your special way, and connect with you, because that's the art process isn't complete until it makes that connection and is able to touch someone else. So
along those lines, though, I'm just
they all had a certain level of intensity to them because it was so fast paced, and it was like, all right, here I have 2 designs. We're going to start on these, and I'm going to keep designing these. And when you do something that has never been done by you before, you always encounter challenges. And so every single day I went in, there was at least one challenge to overcome. But my favorite piece, I have a top 3, but my favorite piece, the piece that was most impactful to me, and I think that kept me really going and excited, was the forward motion piece. So that one is like, that's the one that sticks out in my heart as the one I think I connect with the most. More powerful, but what I will do is I will send them out on art on loan, because that's how they continue to be seen and hopefully sold, right? And so I do a lot of shows in Colorado and also out in Kansas and Missouri, and so they may go out there. And I've recently found out about an art call in St. Louis that they represent like 9 different towns. So I am planning to pitch to them that they take all 9 and then have a little map so people go around to all their different towns. So
like a scavenger hunt.
yeah, so in the immediate future, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, is to keep them together. And who knows, maybe the universe will bring the right situation to me where they get to stay together long term, but yet to be seen. You know, I was raised by an incredibly strong woman, an incredibly stubborn woman, and a father who loves strong, independent women, whose mother was very strong and independent. So when in my young life, I was raised not thinking that there's anything I can't do because I'm female. And my mom actually owned her own business and taught me to drive forklifts and taught me how to boss boys around. And so I have a really strong foundation there. But emerging into the adult world and into this profession, I've found kind of 2 sides of that coin. One is that it's a novelty, and so it allows me to stand out in that way. The other side of that coin is that I have had to learn how to gracefully interact with a lot of mansplaining and kind of the expectation. And this is not from everyone, but it certainly is there. And I've had, back when I did shows, I still remember this guy, and this is a long time ago, who came in and he looked around and he just said, "This is not woman's work." Okay. You know, and so it still happens. I'll stand up in front of giving a presentation and I'll say, "Hey, I'm Jody. I've been doing this for 20 years. Here's all my 15 best pieces of work," and start talking about showing pictures. And I had a guy in one of these right after I'd done that go, "You got to wear a Weldon hood when you're welding." Thank you. I do actually, and he followed with, because OSHA will not like it if you're not well. I'm like, okay, well, that's not why we do it, but like, we do, I promise. And so there certainly are different reactions to it, but it's what I love, and so you put on your blinders when you have to, and you just keep showing up, and yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.